We have everybody in the room. Scott, unfortunately, has had to head off, so he won't be joining us today. But thank you again for joining us, and thanks to all of those who came along last night to the function. So really appreciate it. It was good to chat with some of you at least. I think they're different venues, and I think we might try and lean towards a more conversational agenda venue next time, so that we can all mingle, because it was a little bit hard to have some of those conversations at a fixed table. So we'll make sure we amend that for next year. With that said, if I could just have the agenda brought up on the screen, please. Okay, so today's session, once it stopped moving, we have agenda item 6, which is essentially just a broad discussion on a whole range of topics that may or may not have been included in the presentations and discussions from yesterday's meeting. We'd also like to go back and just touch on each of the agenda items within agenda item 5, so 5.1 and 2 in particular, just to see if you've had a chance or an opportunity to discuss last night, or just generally think about other ideas for potential applied research projects that we could do, or suggestions for those that we have ongoing at the moment. So this morning's session is really going to be about how engaged you'd like to be over the next hour or so, and then we'll break probably around morning tea. We'll quickly finalize the report and then come back and make sure that we've articulated everything that you would like the Commission to see in the report itself. And so hopefully we should wrap up by midday at the very latest. I suspect a little bit earlier, but we'll wait and see. With that said, Giuseppe, is there anything in particular? Anything else you'd like to add?
No, actually, perhaps the only thing is that perhaps we could actually start, excuse me, with discussion on this. So we could start where we left yesterday. That's the end of the discussion yesterday afternoon was regarding the Fisheries Independent Setline Survey. So I would suggest that we start there, and then we move into the different biology and ecology items that were discussed yesterday. So we can open the floor for comments or discussion on anything related to the Fisheries Independent Setline Survey.
So I'm going to try and stimulate the discussion in terms of the design that's been adopted by the Commission for 2025. Do you have any additional comments that you'd like recorded in the report, and then also in terms of the discussion around moving forward, what the design should or should not look like, and things you'd like the Commission to be aware of from the RAB's point of view? Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Found some alternative or additional or complementary funding from State Department, and I would just encourage, and I'm sure you guys are, but maybe to expand that relationship and try to keep it going. It sounds like it started with a little bit, and maybe there's a second year with a little more, so maybe there's some hope there. It's in this day and age, as all the boat operators I'm sure know, things are up, and you guys are finding out things are up, and unfortunately the price of halibut and the amount of halibut doesn't necessarily coincide with those ups. So I just encourage as much alternative funding investigation as you could. Didn't need to be said, but I said it anyway. So.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of reiterate, I think what we've spoke of and addressed probably as a group over the last 2 or 3 meetings, that we had concerns of the randomness because of the funding and because of the concentration of the set surveys being so concentrated that we were losing the scientific benefit of randomness in your surveys. And so we would really encourage, when economically able to do that, that we go back to a more scientific approach as far as the randomness of the survey, to get a broader screenshot rather than such a concentrated shot.
I'm just curious, we've talked a lot about recruitment of vessels to do these surveys and how, yeah, you can come up with a design where we're going to have 4A fished in every 3 years, or we're going to have 4B fished every so often, but it doesn't really matter if no one bids on it. Have you guys done any brainstorming on how to find other vessels that are willing to do it? Obviously, there needs to be an attractive price for someone to want to do it, and they need to have time in their season to want to do it. But I was just curious if you guys have put any strategies together on how to reach out to people. Obviously, there's a risk where just because someone's willing to do it doesn't mean it's a good idea. If someone throws out a number and it looks really good to you, well, it could still end up costing you money in the end if it's a total, if it's a big hot mess. So I was just curious if you guys have ever thought about how to reach out to other people that are going to be capable of doing it. Because obviously one of the problems that's happened recently is there's so much black cod out there and people have responsibilities and obligations to, sometimes the quota holder also, is your boss. And so, yeah, I don't want to fish some of the areas I fish, but I have an obligation to do it. So I would actually much rather do, spend a month and a half on charter than go out to 4A and 4B. I'd rather do a charter in 4A and 4B than go out and fish 4A and 4B. But, I haven't had time recently, but I was just curious if you guys have ever tried to think about strategies of reaching out to people that are capable.
Yeah, so there's a couple of paths, and before I pass to the team to sort of provide some more recent details, over the last number of years, we have been trying specifically to source or tap into the fleet that we haven't been utilizing in the survey in the past. And that's taken a number of forms more recently, and I'll pass to you, Tyler, in just a moment, but also to the extent of even looking at sort of freezer longline vessels and things like that might make it more viable to go and sample out in area for B in particular. But a lot of work has been put into it. The returns at the moment are somewhat limited. Maybe you can provide a bit more specific detail.
Yeah, I think you summed it up mostly. I know that our office specifically has gone down the list of all the vessels that fish in that area and have made cold calls essentially to everybody, had conversations with most of them, and they have the same concerns that you have, that, everyone kind of has black cod quota. But we have been reaching out, making phone calls, but also we are open to any suggestions that you may have, because if there's any other way that we can get the word out, we're all ears. And Dave had a good point too about we're looking at other options too. If we can't get anyone out there that has the standardization that we have now, we thought about maybe like a freezer longliner, or maybe somebody with auto baiters, because that was another problem that we ran into a lot of auto baiters, that we have different hooks that are different from standardization. So that's something that we might explore somehow. We'd have to make some sort of calibration or something, but going forward, it's been hard to drum up more interest, definitely.
I guess one of the big deterrents for fishing, especially out in area 4A and 4B, is how long it takes to get there. And so, if I was going to go all the way out to @2, that can be 4 or 5 days out there and then 4 or 5 days back. Have you guys ever looked into the possibility of tying in survey work with someone's actual fishing? Is that even legal? Can I go out there and fish? Because when people go out to @2, not maybe as often as they used to, but I went out there this year, and a lot of other boats went out there this year, and we found some fish. So, I guess I could see the problem being not having a trained scientist on board the boat, or you bring a trained scientist on the boat, and then what? I devote 2 days of fishing for the charter, and then they're still on board the boat for another 8 days of fishing my own quota. Or is there a way to train our staff to do some work that would be maybe still a pale comparison to what you guys do, but maybe also still valuable? Because some of us are already out there.
Right,
Is there a way to get work done for you while we're out there?
Yeah, that's something that I think we should probably consider for not getting any work out there. Obviously, we talked about how important standardization is, and being able to control for that without our own trained scientists on board makes things difficult, right? Also, I do like the idea of exploring a scenario where you guys are also allowed to fish your own quota. I'm not sure if there is any regs against that, if maybe anyone in the Secretariat has any knowledge of that. I don't know. Maybe not. Yeah. Well, that's something that we should definitely explore then, because if that's something that's kind of holding you back, it's specifically, and maybe others, we should look into it.
We did try last year or the year before, we tried a reduced crew approach where we had a single scientist on board to try and streamline things. And I think our conclusion was that we sort of buried him in work. It was not 100% feasible to have just a single crew.
Yeah, I think that the value of the data that we end up missing out on is worth more than just having one guy kind of on board to take length and weights. I think, especially for, we need things like the fecundity study out there. We need the otoliths and the ages that we're getting out there. Those are all really important data that really kind of requires a 2-person team to collect. So preferably, if we can make that work, that would be the most ideal scenario.
The other big change we made just a few years ago was adding snap gear and standardizing that. And we did, I think we succeeded in getting maybe 2 new vessels involved.
Yeah.
Snap boats, but we expected a flood of vessels. And honestly, it's not 100% clear to us whether there are still some snap boats out there that just don't know about the opportunity, or whether it just that small a pool. We thought it was going to make a bigger difference than it did. We did get a couple new boats.
On having reduced amount of scientists on board, maybe I'm overconfident, but I'm fairly certain I could weigh fish. I could pull balls. I could cut them open and show them to the scientists, and they could maybe even make their own distinction at that point. Otoliths, I learned how to dress a halibut. I'm pretty sure I could eventually figure out how to pull an otolith. I mean, I feel like with a large enough crew, you wouldn't maybe want to do that on a boat that only had, on a snap boat, if they only have 3 people on board, that might be a little tough. But I mean, when we've done charters in the past, we'd have as many as 5 people on board the boat, and we were sitting around all the time. I mean, if you catch a lot of fish, yeah, it's a little trickier because sometimes you even have to bag it off to catch up with clearing the fish out of the checker before the next gate starts. But I mean, most of the time it was, we had a lot of free time. So
yeah, and I don't want to diminish the capabilities of the fishermen out there. You guys, I've worked with you guys out there, and you guys are a huge help. And I have all the confidence in the world that you can do our job probably better than us when we're out there. So, I mean, it just wouldn't be ideal. I mean, if that's the barrier, I think that's something we should absolutely look into, having 1 or 2 scientists on board. Yeah, something we can consider, I think.
So to be clear, I really wasn't saying I could do your job better than you. I was saying that there's some of the stuff that is like, there's 2 of you, and the person in the shack, I wouldn't even want to go anywhere near that. But the person that's doing the grunt work, like I feel like we'd be maybe a little bit slower at it, but I feel like we could probably eventually get it done for you guys.
I think like in an area out there in 4A, 4B, it's definitely something we can consider, just because you're sitting around you're not getting a whole lot of fish. In a place like 2C, 2B, it's probably not a great idea. But yeah, I mean, deck work, a lot of that is, that's obviously natural to you guys, and you guys know how to take otoliths and things like that usually. So depending on the crew and the experience, is probably something we can look at.
Yeah, we did that in the state of Alaska with the blackcod surveys in Chatham Strait. I set the stations down on the lower end of Chatham, and we had 2 biologists on board, and I ended up sidelining one of my guys to them. And because we were tagging and everything, I believe we tagged about 1,800 fish in 4 days. And of course, all the data and everything they needed. So it worked out pretty good. And then also another thing they've done in Chatham is they've allowed people to catch their quota during that time that they're on the survey. So, and this year nobody did it, but some years up to 4 permits are caught during that time. And they're using the stations too. It's not like they're going fishing where they want to fish. They're fishing at stations. So, and I was thinking about that too, because I set those stations lower Chatham, and some of those stations were pretty poor. And I knew they were going to be poor when we set them, but they had picked them out. And then probably 10, 12 years after I did it, then they called me back in and we cleaned them up. Because we had, for example, one station started in 420 and went up to 58 fathoms. Well, and they don't understand why we're getting rockfish and halibut and everything else on it. So, but it was, those kind of things are variables anyway, but that's because, you know, I set up those stations too. But anyway, it did work out well using the crews to fill in a gap too. And that was with 2 biologists on board. So, but I don't know. That's what I was thinking too, Brian, is I don't know why, maybe in certain areas, rather than no data, it could be an option possibly.
I mean, I could see a scenario where maybe we put out the request for tender, maybe for kind of the preference that we have for the FIS to get the data the way we want to get it, with 2 samplers, getting all the sampling done in one chunk. So, you know, we're keeping down costs, but if we don't get any interest, I can see a scenario where maybe we refly the request for tender with other terms maybe that are more favorable to, like what you said, maybe doing some of your own quota work or whatever.
In 2A, we only have one guy ever, unless we're doing 100% count on rockfish stations. And we have 4 guys on deck, and he's usually baiting when he's not doing other things. But whenever we do get buried with fish, he's doing exactly what you described, assisting, and it really speeds up the process well. One thing I wanted to comment on is that it might be easier to recruit boats if there was a little more consistency in the seasons, or, you know, the opportunity for charter opportunities. I know that in my case, like last year, we had nothing in 2A where I had to scramble around and pick up other charters or things in my boat. It just does research. I don't do fishing as well. But, you know, if there's not a consistent opportunity, we're going to take other opportunities, which could preclude the halibut commission on the years when there is a scheduled season. And I see in the near future, it's like every other year is scheduled for that in other areas as well. So that's going to be a problem. I had one other point, if I can remember what it was now. It'll come to me in a minute.
I just wanted, for a point of clarification, we never saw a figure of what exactly was going to be what the commissioners chose for next year, but my understanding is it was figures 8 and 9 combined. Is that correct from that other document?
We can bring that up on the screen.
Okay, yeah, it'd just be nice to get eyes on it, what exactly is happening.
Keep a discussion going on something else.
I remembered what it was. Special projects are interesting and come up once in a while, but oftentimes they're sort of sprung on us towards the middle or the end of the season or something, and we have other plans. If it was possible to anticipate some of the special projects like fecundity or, you know, whale deprivation or something like that, where we could build that into our annual plan, it would help us a lot, and probably help the IPHC a lot. So little more notice might be good for some of these special projects.
When it comes to the bidding for the FIS, more and more boats are leaving earlier for the opener. If there's a way to get that decision to where a boat has been selected for the survey or not, you know, a couple weeks before the opener, that'd be greatly helpful. And also, you mentioned there's been some supplemental funding from the U.S. State Department. Has there been anything coming from the Canadian side?
Yeah, thanks for the comment. So Canada in 2024 provided $125,000 US. In 2023, US provided $114,000. And then for 2025, the US has already provided $387,000. Canada has also indicated that they are actively pursuing additional funding for FY 2025. noting that as part of the intersessional decision, the commission agreed that we would move $1 million from the IPHC General Reserve to the FIS fund so that we could undertake this additional sampling in 3A and 3B. So in short, yes, they are, and they're pursuing it quite vigorously. And similarly with the US, I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch, but there is an additional $2 million in the appropriation bill that's currently before the Appropriations Committee. And so if that comes through, noting there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment with federal government funding, things could look very promising very soon. But again, these are all subject to political discussions that are ongoing in both countries. And so just quickly, so as I said, this is circular, I'm just trying to remember what it is now, I can't see, 30, which is on the website. And so this is the design that was requested from the special session. And then in circular 31 is where they actually adopted it. And so this is the design that will be implemented in 2025. And then, sorry, someone had their hand up. And I know those online can't see this because I'm not displaying it through the Adobe Connect, but it is on the IPHC website as circular 30 from this year.
Yeah, just to touch on what he was talking about, changing your approach to make bidding on the survey a lot more desirable. I've inquired in the past about catching IFQ quota during charters. It's always been a hard no, but that would be a major game changer if that could be incorporated. The logistics are a little bit screwy, but it's doable, and it would allow us a lot more flexibility because we've got our stuff to catch, and if we have to wait until we're done chartering to do it, then it impacts our prices and everything else. But yeah, I don't know how you devote a little bit of time to doing IFQs and make sure that you guys get your stuff done in a timely manner. But it would be, especially out west, and those areas that you have a hard time getting people to bid on.
Just to reiterate Lando's point, I mean, I had cleanup in 4B this year and I had cleanup in 3B this year where I was planning on spending about 3 days fishing my own quota in an area. Well, I could fish an additional 7 days and have no issues with the processor in terms of the quality of the fish, at least in 4B. In 3B, if I was going to deliver fresh, I could have done it, another 2 days there. Obviously, might be tough to get bait and a scientist on notice, but if I knew I had that 3B cleanup, for instance. I knew for a month and a half I was going to have to do that. And I could have given you constant updates on where I was at and can you get some bait to Acatan or Sandpoint in time for me to pick it up a month from now? I think you guys probably could have been able to do that. And then the 4B, yeah, I went halfway out the chain again because I missed it on the first go when I went all the way out there. And I really only needed to fish 3 days there, and I would have happily fished, at least another 4 or 5 days and gotten some stations done. If you guys can get that done, you'll definitely have some takers just out of, coincidence and convenience. People will realize, you said what the grant has offered. Yeah, I'll do 10 days for you, but that's it. They'll give you a hard deadline on, I'll devote some time to you. I'm not going to promise you I'm going to do a whole region, but we have 10 days right now where we can fish for you guys. That's like a whole trip. But if we could do, I got 3 days of my own fishing, but then I can give you 4. You just need to ride along for 3. And I don't know, we've had port samplers come up to us before and ask us to mark the fish of our own, of IFQ fish in a way so that you can get better information, sex at the dock. Well, you could have your scientists on board doing some sort of work that still might be valuable to you. That'd be huge.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I would suggest if you have certain terms like that you would agree to for 4A and 4B, is that we're open to negotiation when we put the RFT. So yeah, please, even if it's only 10 days you can offer, give us a bid on that and put the details.
Yeah, our boat, we use commission gear 100% of the time. We used to have 21-foot gear, and then we got tired of bringing 18-foot gear and 21-foot gear, and so we just changed it all over to 18.
Just to pick up where you left off, Brian, there, yeah, a 3-week commitment for the entire charter region. I don't know that most people can afford that, but if you could break it down into 10-day commitments, you know, it might take 3 boats to do that region, but that might be more desirable for boats that are strapped for time.
Logistical components there to work through, but I'm getting head nods as something that try and look into.
So we can sign you both up for 10 days in 4B?
Well, I find the irony in it is that we kind of bunched these together in 4A and 4B to give a lot of work in the area, and it sounds like what we have an appetite for is less work at a time. So just interesting. Yeah.
Well, sometimes fishing goes well, and then other times we're struggling. So if a guy has time in an area, we've all been there. And some days, some years, it's just like you're beating your head against a wall, and then other years, it's like, geez, this is awesome. But it does free people up, but you don't know that going into it.
Yeah, on that note, I mean, it's like if I had had 10 days, I would have offered it. I got home 3 weeks later than I've ever been home before. And you know, it was a rough season in a lot of different ways. Parts of the boat broke down, parts of the crew broke down. So yeah, it was a difficult year. But it's been a while since I felt this way, where I felt like, hey, I'm really ahead of schedule. But yeah, when it's I think in 2020, when we did Prince William Sound and Seward charters, we couldn't get a flight home because it was COVID too. So we were kind of really, you know, turning and burning, just trying to get through the season. It was the 20th of July, and we had everything done but 9,000 pounds of 3A when we headed into that charter. So I mean, we were like, gosh, if we weren't doing a charter, we'd be home 1st of August. This is crazy. But and then we did the charter for a month and a half. But yeah, I guess if there was something, and obviously there's a lot of logistics here, and not all boats are capable of it because they don't have commission gear on board necessarily. And Sean touched on that. It might be nice to know if we were going to get the charter. It used to be we had to bring a whole different set of gear if we were going to do the charter. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if there's any possibility of picking up a charter or part of a charter on short notice, you know, I could see that working out too. But what Jim was touching on, it's really hard to know. I don't want to make a commitment to you guys. I don't like committing to anybody or anything if I'm not actually going to be able to do it. So I usually just don't commit to it so that I don't let somebody down. Because my first obligation is to the 2 people that own the other half of the boat that I own. And, you know, I've made a commitment to them to fish their quota. So I have to get that done first and foremost. But if things were going well, you know, I can decide, all right, we're going to spend another 10 days fishing in this area, or and that possibility is becomes way more likely if what Lando and I were touching on is possible. If we can fish our own quota while we're at it, I think you'll get a lot of opportunity from boats that are doing cleanup trips.
Yeah. So how much time would you predict that you would need to know that you can do some fish stations? Because I think bait would be our limiting factor in that case. So as long as we could probably get bait, that would be our first box to check.
It's probably going to take prodding from you guys. It's going to take you guys calling me up and asking, because it's not like I'm checking in with you. I check in about once a year with Kayla, maybe twice a year, and I just ask her how are things going. If this year,
Do you have Starlink? Because we can
I do
talk every day.
Yeah. This year, I don't know if I checked in much because it became pretty obvious to me about midway through the year it was going to be a long one. But I usually check in with Kayla and ask how things are going and if there still needs to be work done. I remember one year where, I don't know, we were finishing up some work and Wade got a call, and I think an entire crew that had bid on a charter had quit the boat, And so she's like, name your price. Like, we need this to get done. And we didn't end up doing it. I think maybe somebody else picked it up. But yeah, I can check in, and you guys can, honestly, you can call me anytime you want, and you can always ask.
Another thing too is port samplers know us and have them talk to us too, and just say, hey, you know, we could use some help in our different areas. I think communication probably is but we see the port samplers all the time, and most of us have pretty good, you know, good relationships with the ones we see. And so.
You used to do, or at some point in the last 20 years, you guys used to do multiple year awards. And I guess with the design changing year to year, that would be sort of a little convoluted, but what are the drawbacks of multiple year awards?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So that actually came up in last year's discussions with the commission, and then also this year when we were looking at alternatives and going back over time and seeing what we did. And I'm going to pass to some of the team who had more specific experience during that time. But my understanding is that the multi-year awards or contracts were awarded, but with an escape clause, I think for the last year, those 3 years. And what was happening is that a number of those vessels were using that escape clause in the second or third year, and it was just creating quite a bit of issue. But maybe, Claude, were you around specifically during that time?
Yeah, I was involved with a bunch of that. So the contracts would be typically for 3 years, and we would be doing those areas for those 3 years. Vessels would estimate their costs and put a bid in, and typically they were averaging out, you know, risks of fuel, travel, all those sorts of things, fish prices. For the 3 year duration, they would do the work for the first and second year, and then they would drop out the third year and rebid it. Sometimes just because that was financially beneficial to them, but more often because fuel prices were very erratic at the time. And so, you know, they'd be facing the second year going, geez, how are we going to make this pencil out with fuel costs the way they are? But it certainly has been done. It, you know, with the alternating kind of or lack of long-term stability in the financial backing of the plan right now, it probably makes it more difficult. But it was certainly something that's been recently explored and talked about as well. So we would essentially get 2 years out of the 3 and then start over. But the amount of stability in it that we thought we'd get was never quite there for both the boats or us. But it did give them a second year typically, but they'd often bag out for the third. I think we only had it once where they stayed for all 3.
This is I guess more of an idealistic idea rather than realistic. Try not to laugh. For years, we've been trying to hold the trawl industry to a bycatch cap, and now looks like abundance-based management has gone through, and we won a lawsuit. Any thought to when they exceed the halibut bycatch, that the fine that's imposed would go towards scientific research?
I don't think that's something to be laughed at all. I think that's a legitimate, I guess, focus. If there are those kinds of exceeding whatever the ABM limit is and associated penalties, it would take a lot of work and a lot of discussion at the council. It's certainly something worth pursuing. But is anyone else sort of more familiar with the discussions on ABM at the moment and how those overages would be handled? I don't know. Ian, are you? No, we don't have Alan in the room, unfortunately.
I don't know if there's been any contingency planning for overages. I think the whole system's designed on the expectation that they're going to stay under that limit, however it takes, and or NOAA might shut them down if they were to get too close to it. But it seems like a conversation worth having.
I'm pretty sure Ian's right about that. I mean, I can shoot a text to Nicole Kimball, who undoubtedly knows that. And we'll see what her input is, but I'll tell her I'm here, and I'll shoot her a text and see what she says.
And I think other than that, it's mostly, I was concerned with that lawsuit recently, and that with the win of that lawsuit, I think there will be a little bit more of a kind of free conversation about what would be the action if the limit was to be reached.
Yeah.
I think there's been so much publicity the last couple of years that they've kind of had their, didn't have a choice, but I'm sure, I'd be surprised if that was their preferred reaction.
Yeah, we're talking about the Amendment 80.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just this is feels like a little bit of a different topic, but we're talking about shutdowns. I heard something about commercial halibut being shut down in Prince William Sound. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Where I heard that from?
That was last year. And the state of Alaska, I think they stepped way outside of bounds. I brought it up, I think, at this meeting last year. And they shut it down for the rest of the season in the sound, claiming a rockfish bycatch issue. But what was ironic about it was they were talking about yelloweye, and the guys that were getting a rockfish weren't getting yelloweye, they're getting short riggers. So it was like, well, it's the wrong species, but it was interesting because they did it at the Board of Fish without any public comment, wouldn't allow any public comment. They added it. It wasn't even on the agenda, and they did it at the very end of the meeting. And they got away with it. But nobody was going in there anyway. There was no fish to catch. So. But that was at the very end of the last 5 weeks or so of the season last year. And then that expired with the new year, and never heard any more about it now.
Someone told me, and I don't know if this is correct at all, but I heard it was recreationally driven. Brian, is that right, or what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I definitely heard a lot from those people concerns over yelloweye and stuff, because I think that they might be at zero retention for yelloweye right now in Prince William Sound on the sports side. Yeah, so there was definitely a lot of concern. Yeah, I think that the sport industry was kind of torn on that one between whether shutting down a whole area is appropriate or not. But yeah, it came out of the recreational side for sure.
So that was part of the discussion during the last RAB meeting, and we have reached out to the ADFG following that emergency closure in 2023, in December 2023. So currently there's a proposal to the Alaska Board of Fisheries to grant the commissioner the authority to close areas to commercial fishing with specific gear types by emergency order. This is a proposal link. If you are interested in details, this document is linked in the updates to RAB document that is available for this meeting. And the decision on that proposal is expected in December this year. So if you are interested in more details, we have also contact information to the person who can provide specific details on specific areas and so on. So we don't have this very specific details on that. They asked us if you have any specific questions, please reach out to Forrest Bowers, Acting Director of the Division of Commercial Fisheries. And the email address is in that document.
Any last comments on the surveying?
Yeah, so this is the footprint that's approved for this year, definitely. And then going forward, you have projections on where you'd like to change it around. Are those pretty definite too, or?
And so I'm going to backtrack on the word definite. So we still have to put out the RFT. And so depending on the tenders that we actually get, we'll take those back to the commission to see if they were within the scope of the budget that we have calculated for 2025. If there is bids that are significantly higher than last year, we will need to rethink it because this design has been approved by the commission with, as I mentioned earlier, $1 million being removed from our general reserve to the Fishery Independent Setline Survey. And so that's high risk. It means that our general reserve will be depleted. And if this becomes or significantly revenue negative, we'll need to rethink that. And so that's the design that we're going to be putting the RFT out for. That's the intention. We've purchased bait for it already. We still need to wait and see come February next year what those bids actually look like. But there's a very strong chance, a likelihood that this is going to be the final design. For 2026 and moving forward, that's going to, Ray, have you recalculated those or options based on the sampling that's being intended for 2025, or is it still? No, the alternative designs for 26, 27, 28. You're going to, I'm assuming you would go back and actually redo. Yeah. Yeah. Because this isn't the base block design that was originally proposed for 2025. It's a modified version. Yeah.
The designs for 26, yeah, there'll probably be some modification based on what we actually fish in 2025, but they will have the same footprint, just with some variation in which specific charter regions will be fished, particularly in 3A and 3B. But the number of stations will be the same, 750 or whatever it was. Yeah.
And of course, the caveat to that is if we do get significant supplementary funding from the contracting parties, then we'll revisit it again for 2026 in full.
I guess when I look at it, I kind of wish we could have helped you set that survey. It would have, I think we could have improved on what I see up there quite a bit.
Sorry, can you say again?
Oh, I said I kind of wish we could have helped you design that proposed survey for 2025. I think we could have improved on what I see. That's my thought. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so was I.
How many boats does that represent with typical bids or historical?
Tyler?
I think we're expecting probably 5 vessels for this work here.
5
for
the entire survey?
Yeah.
And last year you were short?
Last year we did 8 vessels, and the year before that we did 8 vessels with last year we did 5 vessels, but the year before that, when we had 950 stations, it was 8 vessels.
Didn't some areas go unfished for lack of vessels? Or did that come?
Yeah, just that same 4A, 4B area. But this could also potentially be done with 4 vessels. So we're just going to see how the bids look.
Looking at 4A, 4B, and 2A, that was added with the extra funding that you guys secured for this year, right?
Correct. That's the 387 from State Department. Yeah.
Okay. And then were those areas that you're surveying there, were those set based on them being like the highest yield in those areas, or are they just what would help the most with the model?
Yeah, that's both things are true. Yeah. That's where the highest density of fish is in 2A and 4A, 4B. So that's where we get the most signal for trends in the model as well. But also cost effectiveness when we're fishing those areas. We haven't done R2 since 2019, but we're not going to get money in 2025 to do R2.
Thanks. Another question, maybe this is a little goofy, I don't know. 2B. Is there something written in that we have to survey some part of 2B every year, or do we have to allocate some money to surveying there, or could that potentially be shuttled somewhere else, maybe some of that effort could be focused on, more where there's a center of the biomass and, 3B or 3A.
From a scientific point of view?
I would say the center of the biomass is getting closer to 2B, 2C. That's where the highest densities are right now. It's not 3A, 3B. Politically, I think that would be a difficult choice to make, with the Canadians wanting quite reasonably to see some sampling in their regulatory area.
Okay, yeah, I guess I have some other thoughts on that, but maybe we should speak off the record about that.
Just so I can understand maybe the cost of some of the ideas we were talking about earlier, is the wages for a sea sampler while we're fishing, while we're traveling, and while we're in town, is that public information? Just so I can understand sort of some, like if they're going to be riding along, for instance, while we're fishing IFQ, let's say we're able to push that through. I just kind of wanted to know how that would affect maybe the whole bidding process.
Yeah, I don't think it's published, actually.
So in terms of the overall numbers, they're in the circular, for example, but in terms of the breakdown for the specifics you were talking about, there are different prices for when someone's on standby. So you can talk about those. Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have a different standby price. So if they're in standby waiting in port, they get paid lesser value than when they're what we call vessel day. So if they're on the vessel, they're getting the same amount of money. So which is a bit higher. And each sampler, depending on their experience, is paid a little bit different. So lead samplers might be paid a little bit more than what we call a second sampler. So if they were in a situation where we only had one sampler, like you suggested, they also would be paid at the lead rate. Yeah.
I guess what I'm alluding to is just one of the hurdles for putting a bid out that I feel like we're not always really transparent about what we're trying to do in terms of, like, obviously I want to get a price, I want to get a bid accepted that I'm willing to do. Sometimes I guess I don't even necessarily know sometimes what you guys are, where your lines are. And I understand maybe not wanting to be super transparent about that because you don't want to accept the lowest ball offer either. But just the more information, I guess, that is available to me would help me put out a bid that, might be reasonably accepted. I mean, at one point I was talking about, I threw a number out there and I based, my bid on a Canadian boat that done it the year before. And I was told, well, they had some like fees associated with like custom fees because they're from Canada. And I'm like, well, I don't really care that they're from Canada. If this is what they got the bid for, then it should be reasonably what I get the bid for. And I also, honestly, I was making a little bit of a point with that bid where I was saying, look, I value doing 4 stations a day. And if you're going to design a charter where I can only do 3 a day, then I'm going to go ahead and treat 3 stations as I would normally 4, because that's how I value my time. And I know it didn't, you guys didn't even come close to accepting my bid, but I'm willing to work, fish more than 18 hours a day. That's not an issue for my crew. I want to get 4 done. I can burn through it and get the hell out of there. And I understand that you guys want to fish 800 hooks, but at that time, I didn't want to spend that long doing it. And then I was also told, look, I mean, they have some custom fees, and it's like, well, don't give them the bid then. Give it to an American boat. I understand I just feel like I don't know. I just thought that was a little odd.
Yeah, no, I agree. What if I told you we're doing only 600 hooks?
600 hooks is good. I think I can get 4 done. I mean, obviously, for a long time when we did the charters, we got really, really lucky with weather, where we were able to get 4 done every single day unless it was just a weird pattern. I mean, there's usually 2 days a trip where we couldn't do 4. All the other days we did 4. I don't know if the C samplers were super happy with it, but from my point of view, they were getting enough sleep.
Yeah, we love working 18-hour days, actually. No, I mean, yeah, they're out there to work. So
600 hooks, I think we could get done. I remember when we did Seward and in 2020, we did Seward and Prince William Sound, and it was 800 hooks. And we baited all the gear as if we were going to set, what would that be? 3,200 hooks. And I mean, it was a 24-hour a day with the runs. And so we shook a whole set. And I was surprised because I knew Wade wanted to get 4 done a day. He's like, that's too much gear. Not gonna be able to do it. I mean, maybe to finish off a trip, if you just needed that one last station done, we could do it. But it wasn't going to be sustainable for a whole trip with, I mean, the scientists didn't like it, and it was a tough day for us too.
Yeah. But
I remember we did 600 hooks and did 4 stations a day many times. I really liked it when it was even less than that, but I understand you guys wanting to
maximize,
get some fish on board too. Yeah.
Profits. Yeah, it is. So the design that we're currently going with for 2025 is 6 skates for 4A, 4B. 4A, 4B. Yeah, don't get too excited. And also to touch on your point about like how we consider both bids, and I think we're asking the vessels to incorporate all their costs into their bid, and so that's why a vessel from Canada, they do have extra insurance costs to be in the U.S. and have samplers on board. So they have to include that in their bid. But I don't think that meant we would just pick them because they had to do that. We are still comparing vessels and their prices evenly, right? So I don't think we're giving any sort of we weren't favoring that vessel because their price, because they had these extra costs, as far as I know.
Just from that point of view, like if a vessel thinks they need 8 people to get the work done and they're considering a day wage for their crew, and I can get it done with 4, it doesn't mean I'm willing to do it for the same day. Like if I have cheaper costs because I'm better at doing it, then, I don't feel like that means I deserve less money. I feel like if I'm better at doing it, then I deserve more money per day. That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes.
It's probably been covered here, but could you remind me, for the 2025 FIS, how many stations are being proposed in each of 4A and 4B, and also how many skates per station?
Yeah, so 4A, 4B, I think it's 30 in 4A, 30 in 4B, and it's 6 skates for all of them for 2025.
Is it 6 skates and 2A as well?
Yeah, 6 skates. No, this year actually we're doing 8 skates in 2A. No, I think it penciled out. To 8. Because this would be the first time, because I know that you guys usually do 4 to 6, and I think this would be the first time we did 8, but it actually ended up penciling out that it would work out better for us with 8 skates this year with catch rates.
We can double check all those numbers, and after the break, we'll come back and make sure we're 100% certain of that. Any additional thoughts, comments on the survey design?
Yeah, you said the trawl survey is changing their approach or their model or something. How are they changing it?
Yeah, so the Bering Sea Trawl Survey has been using essentially the same design, which is a fixed station design, and the same gear since I think the late 1970s. And they've gotten to the point where they literally can't even buy the trawl gear that they're using for that survey. They have a few custom made nets in some sheds, and that's it. Nobody's even making nets out of that kind of material anymore. So starting this year, the other issue going on is that they haven't done the Bering Sea slope survey since 2016. So there's been a huge gap in their deep water. They've also added in recent years more frequently the northern Bering Sea, and they're basically just running out of resources to do it all. So they rather than make a little change and make another little change and make another little change, they said, look, let's just clear the slate and start fresh. So what they're going to do is they're going to change the gear to a modern trawl with the expectation that they'll have a trawl that will fish both on the shelf and on the slope. They're also going to change the design to, I believe, a more stratified random design rather than the fixed station design, so that they can allocate effort unevenly to get basically more return for their effort. Not quite as much as we're doing with our charter regions, but moving in this direction from just a fixed grid. And then the third change that they're making is that they're changing, well, there might even be four. They're also changing their tow duration from 30 to 15 minutes to try and get more work done every day. So no, they're towing for 15 instead of the historical 30. So all of these things are going to potentially change the catchability for every species they catch. And the things like tow duration, a big sablefish or halibut or cod might swim in front of the net for 15 minutes and never get caught, whereas 30 minutes, a greater fraction of those are going to get caught. So they're going to be developing species and length specific calibrations over the next few years. They're going to be fishing the two gears side by side, 30-minute, 15-minute tows. This year in 2024, they already did some work on the slope, testing out, working in some of the deeper waters. So it's potentially a pretty huge redesign of that survey. They're going to be adding, hopefully more consistently, the northern Bering Sea, recognizing that a lot, particularly cod, are spending a lot of time up there, which is actually going to benefit us because we use the halibut data from the northern Bering Sea as well. And we would anticipate with a warming Bering Sea more and more halibut up there as well in that northern section. So as Ray mentioned, we did a paired calibration with the historical survey in 2006 and 2015. And I was actually dead wrong about the results of that calibration. I predicted that we were going to go in 2015 and we're going to see something totally different than we saw in 2006. And I was wrong. We actually got a very similar calibration. The catch rates for our stations, and we did 2 longline stations on either side of the trawl station. And we didn't do every station, but we did enough to get a pretty powerful calibration. Well, there's not much there. In the Bering Sea, there are a lot of halibut in the Bering Sea, but as you all know, they're spread out to the point where they're not really in a density that's worth trying to catch with longline gear. But there are a lot of them there. If you add up, there's a huge shelf area. I think something around 50% of the overall appropriate depth for halibut on the entire coast is in the Bering Sea. It's a huge area. It's just really low density, but it adds up to some fish. So the upshot of all this is that we have an existing calibration with the historical survey. The NOAA scientists are going to be doing length-based calibrations, and we may, for some period of time, perhaps even forever, be able to use the calibration that they develop between their new gear and their old gear to piggyback to our gear. But as Ray mentioned, it might also be necessary at some point for us to calibrate directly to their new gear, because we're interested not just in how many halibut they catch, but also the length distribution of those fish, because we need to pair up the size of fish. We need to know for a trawl set, how many fish would we have seen of the sizes we catch on the longline survey, given what they caught in the trawl survey. And most of the fish they catch in the trawl survey are 2 to 6 years old, and we wouldn't have seen them with longline gear. So it's only a little bit of the information from that comes forward. So it's kind of unknown right now. They're already embarked on this. It's not a negotiation. They're making all these changes, and we're going to be watching it unfold over the next few years and trying to decide whether we have to do another calibration, or whether we can use the work that they're doing between their old and their new gear. It's a pretty big deal. I think it's not necessarily a bad idea. It's kind of something that they have to do. If any of you are familiar with the New England trawl surveys, they had a trawl survey. They have 2 trawl surveys a year there, spring and fall, and they've been running since the 50s. And about 10 years ago now, they did a similar thing. They got rid of their nets, they changed vessels, they changed everything. And I think the general conclusion is it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off and make all the changes you need to make rather than to make little tiny piecemeal changes over a 10-year period, because then you really don't know what you have for a long time. Whereas if you just do it, you make the transition and move forward. But that's what's going on in the Bering Sea.
I got an answer back on that. The ABM, the cooperatives can impose fines if they want, but there's nothing in regulation about fines. So it is just a fishery closure if that cap is exceeded, met or exceeded.
Also, I did confirm that 2A work will be in 2025. It will be 8 skates. Sorry, Al.
What's the earliest time that someone can start a charter?
I believe it's May 27th this year.
And then what about, I remember in 2020, you really wanted everything done by the 1st of September. Is that still the goal there?
We have been able to negotiate if we need to go to the mid-September, so September 15th. Still,
Yeah, so it's middle of September is the data cut off. And so I think last year, because we had such a reduced footprint, we just encourage it to compact it down so we could make cost savings with staff and the like. But there's no requirement to have it done by early September. It's the middle of September is the cutoff. Okay, noting we've got some other things to discuss. Last call for comments on the survey design. Okay. If not, then we'll wrap that section up and I'll pass to Giuseppe to walk us through any final discussion and points you might like to raise on the biological and ecosystem science research projects. Over to you, Giuseppe.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, we have a few minutes before the break. We're supposed to break for about 15 minutes at 10:30. So we have, I'm sorry, at 10:15. So we have about 5. We could extend it a little bit more, but this is an opportunity really before we go on to the review of the draft and adoption of the report after the break, now to maybe revisit or express some comments or recommendations regarding the biological research that was presented. So I'll just remind you that we presented data on the population structure. The conclusion was that at least we're identifying a single genetic stock, which is consistent with the way that the stock is currently managed, a single stock. Secondly, we presented updates on the maturity schedules. Those are awaiting the 2024 data to have 3 consecutive years, so that we're going to be revising that and feeding that into the upcoming stock assessment in 2025, the full one. Any recommendations in that regard would be appreciated. Also, as a reminder, we presented data also on the recreational discard mortality rates from the recreational charter fishery. So we presented discard mortality rates specifically on one viability category. So those are the fish that were released in excellent condition, which represented pretty much 90% of the fish that were released. And then lastly, we presented some of the plans for continuing the catch protection study with the whale avoidance strategies, whale predation avoidance strategies, and also the modification of hooks for reducing bycatch. So that was just a reminder of what we covered yesterday. So if you have any comments, suggestions, recommendations, now is the time.
Seemed like yesterday there was more interest actually in the group about the sand flea issue, and I don't know where that falls into any of that existing research, or if I think that we, as a secretary, or as a group, we need to figure out maybe a statement as to what we would like to see happen moving forward with the sand fleas as far as research goes. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah, I've got from last meeting or the one before, we were talking about where the juveniles, the young ones, are maturing at. That's never really been identified, is my understanding, and I was wondering, we were talking about that, but was any more research ever done, or we talked about doing some more research, or even how we'd go about it, like plankton trawls or something with NOAA?
No, I think you're probably referring to some of the data that were presented on maybe the mapping of the juvenile habitat. That is something that we had an intern in 2023 that spent the whole summer just collecting existing data from Alaska, University of Alaska Fairbanks in Alaska, mapping the type of substrate, co-occurring species, other flatfish that occupy similar habitats as Pacific halibut. That was written in a report, and to be honest, we have not been able to follow up on that. That is something that is still on our minds. We know very little about the juvenile stages. So fish that are younger than 2 to 4 years old, from age 0 to age 2, which is that critical period where juveniles are present in nursery areas. And Bristol Bay is the best known nursery area for Pacific halibut. We know very little what happens there. And that's a time in development where fish are very susceptible to environmental change and probably susceptible to growth changes that probably likely influence growth trajectories moving forward. So that we recognize that is a really important project, but unfortunately we've been busy with other projects, and it hasn't really escaped our mind, but we haven't been able to make plans to continue it. But we hope to do that in the future. So that's a good reminder. Any other ideas or suggestions, recommendations from any other topics? Yeah, Sean.
In regards to my thought on the fine, or what we know from what Brian found with the abundant space management, and the fishery being shut down if the trawl industry exceeded that limit, would it be worth trying to reach out to try and get those internal fines that that those companies are imposing on the boats to be used towards scientific research? I mean, obviously they can say no, but if they're trying to have transparency and bridge relationships here, it might be worth reaching out and see if those internal fines that those boats are, being imposed on by their companies could be used towards our research. I think it's worth asking for.
Yeah, I think that we could look into that and pursue that. That would probably be a conversation to have with Chris Woodley and Sarah Webster, who a lot of people here know. So would probably not be a hard conversation to have. So we could look into that.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Sean. Any other comments? So I have written down that for the research component, we have indications about the sand flea issues, how to address those. Keep in mind the juvenile stages in our plans for future research and inquiring of whether, those fines could be channeled towards funding directed to scientific activities that would include the survey or the kind of biological and ecosystem type research that we're conducting here. Anything else before we go on the break? Yeah.
Maybe just to highlight at the very end of Claude's presentation on the whale depredation work, he mentioned that we had to delay in 2024 because we didn't get a bid for that work. And we really need a bid this year. So I just want to throw that back up in the air so everybody's aware that this is really our chance. We're going to have to bid this work out this year, and we'll be willing. We're hoping to do that work on the 4A, 4B boundary, or perhaps on the 4A edge. Sean actually helped us identify a couple of areas that have pretty high likelihood of having whale activity while we're there. We would potentially be willing to possibly do it somewhere else if we absolutely can't get somebody to work in those areas, but we really do need to get this work done this year. And it would be a shame, I think, to have this external funding that we've pulled in go to waste just because we can't find a boat to do it. So I don't know if you all want to make a statement that you think it's a good idea and you hope somebody bids on it.
As you're talking to Ian, I got an idea of somebody, he'd be good for this group too, actually, but I'll contact him. He's got a crane and he's pretty forward thinking too. So I'll talk to him, let you know what feedback I get back.
Do you need a crane for this work?
Crane, you need to be able to pick over the side.
Yeah.
Substantial.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of rigging. It's because there's weight in it, and you get that weight up in the air, it swings around. So yeah.
So our black cod boom, handles the pots fine, but I tried to lift like 5-6 skates out of my hold one time and didn't do a great job. So something like that would need to be tested first.
Yeah.
I would need to maybe change my hydraulics around a little bit.
Yeah, and then yeah.
I got $1 million hook and a $1,000 winch.
Well, at least the hook won't fail anyway. But another thing.
We have video.
We do have video. Yeah, I can either get that available during the break or whatever works. No, they were good. It's wide open and the water flows freely through it. And even clipping the device on, there was a learning curve to that. But by the end of it, they were doing that in a minute and a half, threading the device on, sending it down to the bottom, and then picking the gear. So it became a very efficient, once we had it dialed in, which was like any new piece of gear. Yeah.
Given the weight of the shuttle, it sounds to me like it would be beneficial to reach outside just the long line industry, maybe the crab industry, to someone that has the hydraulics and that to handle the shuttle.
Well, and the guy I'm thinking about does have quota in 4A too, so I was kind of thinking maybe get him to tag it in while he's doing the fishery and have people on board. But
I think the reason they want to do it out there is the capacity for running the kill rope.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, cadets having more and more problems. Portlock, albatross,
Chirikov.
Sure. Yeah, they're getting to be a bigger problem all the time. When they're on you, they're on you. That's all there is. Sometimes you're lucky you don't see them for a week or so, but then they show up.
Sorry, Al, what was your question? There was crosstalk and I missed it.
You mentioned in the toothfish, 2,500 pounds. Were those bigger units?
Those were bigger units, yeah,
Yeah.
but similar hydraulic capability on what they were using them for. You know, they're seeing similar haul capability that you had on fisheries they're using them on in South Africa right now. Some of them are using more of a davit arm with a ramp sort of device that hangs over the gunnel on that side, and it I don't know, somehow they use that to help haul the device out, but it's certainly not a game changer. Once they get it up onto deck, they slide it over and lift it up and dump it out.
So you could do that. You could break it over the rail and then lift the ass end of it up and dump it that way. So we get 15 once or something.
Roger, we got about 15 or 17. I forget what the max was, but we had several hauls like that. Yeah, we had 2 skates of control and 2 skates with the treatment device, so with the shuttle. So that was just 2 skates of gear, so 200 hooks. And we use a blank skate to get the device down to the bottom so that we're not lifting fish into the water column first and exposing them to depredation. Not that the whales can't depredate on the bottom, but currently they're largely not. They prefer to just be lazy and hang near the surface, and you bring the fish to them. But there's definitely evidence that in some cases, depending on what depth you're fishing in, they are getting them off the bottom. But
They get them off the bottom all the time for me. I've really been struggling in 4A recently, and I can't tell you how many times I've gone to haul gear and it's just been picked clean. They're gone the day before. I went and sat in the bay for a day, went back out, gear's completely picked clean. And this is anywhere from, 50 to 150. No problem for them. Especially in 4A anyway.
I've had that happen out in the Gulf too, so. But that's sperm whales. They're going down and working the gear all the way down, and there's nothing you do to stop that. But they had one of these shuttles at the expo last year, and it was kind of nice to be able to see it and, physically and think about how a guy would work it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going today, and I saw it last year. I guess if I was going to be interested in this sort of work, I would really want to talk with maybe you and also my hydraulic guy, because I know as soon as we put this winch on board and we started hauling black cod pots, my hydraulic lines got way, way hotter than they were before, and I had to install an extra cooler. So I don't know. It's from my point of view, with the little amount of heavy lifting we do, it seems like it would be a big risk to try to get someone outfitted to do it when unforeseen problems with hydraulics could pop up. I would be very wary of doing it, and it maybe isn't worth the risk to have someone like me try to change my setup to do it, because just hauling black cod pots alone, my hydraulics got really hot the first year, and I had to make some changes, and this is even heavier. So
I've only got a 35-gallon pump. We're hauling it direct engine RPMs, 850 to 950, 1,600 pounds I'm set at. We had no problem hauling the main line, and I got a PL5 on my pick and boom, a Bullmaster 5, and that's what I used to pick it with. So the 35 gallons at 900 RPMs was plenty.
yeah, the vessels that are using these devices, bigger ones, they're not modifying their hydraulics to deal with it. It's meant to be a tool that could be used by the majority of vessels with the majority of gear they have on their vessel. Some vessels obviously have bait claims or things like that are a little bit harder to kind of configure to create ease in and out, but I think even that is being shown to be doable. We probably have to talk to the inventor and discuss with him how he's seen it used on other operations.
I guess one last comment on that, there's a stopper that creates the point at which you're going to pull the unit up, and we would have the ability to adjust the number of skates that were going through the unit to be appropriate for the catch rate in the area and the picking ability of the vessel. So if we, for example, if we never wanted the unit to fill up, we could pull just a single skate through that unit and have a blank skate in between and pull that up. So there is some we can adjust the design to accommodate potentially some variability there.
And then just take the stopper off and just slide it back down again then?
Yeah, we get multiple stoppers,
Yeah.
and you just take the unit off, put it back on, set it down for the next skate. We would probably have to think about where we put the blank skates and how we would do that, but that's definitely something that we could be flexible on.
You'd want to anticipate your catch to do that properly, so.
Yeah, what he's saying is you'd have like running lines in between skates. But yeah, comes down to how many hooks are you gonna turn in a day? Yeah, and the bycatch and everything goes in there, so it's a lot of unknowns and variables, so.
Well, that 4A edge north of Dutch Harbor, I would say for 2 miles a year, you could expect 1,000 to 1,500 pounds of fish with commission gear.
Something just, I think we talked about it. Does that device you say it has a crucifier in it? And isn't that prohibited in R2A research? But I mean, I guess for the validity of the device to actually be used in the industry, it's going to need to be modified to where it complies with, or either the law adjusts or the device adjusts, right?
Yeah, so as Claude mentioned yesterday, we've got some design options for how to think about making that a less traumatic trip through this unit for fish. But on the flip side, it may be that this technology is appropriate in areas where the whales are there and you don't want to feed them anything. And so maybe this goes more of a route of a full retention fishery when you're using this unit. Because the nice thing about the unit is you put the stoppers on and you don't have to put the unit on unless you need it. So you could be fishing along with these, you'd have a couple extra stoppers in your gear. Whales aren't there, you don't use the unit. Whales show up, now all of a sudden, okay, we don't want to feed the whales, you use the unit. And it seems like one solution would be to just say, whatever you catch with this particular unit, you got to keep. Because we definitely documented some fairly substantial damage on the fish that went through the unit. But then, as Claude mentioned, we do have some potential avenues to adjust that as well. The concern there is if you make it really friendly on the fish and then you just putting all the fish back over the rail, you're just feeding the whales after you caught them and you haven't maybe gotten ahead.
I'll just add this type of regulatory change would be fully within the IPHC authority. So if that was something that there was appetite for, it could be part of the IPHC regulatory change process.
So, and to the comments about how much fish can it handle, how much can your vessel handle on hauling the device, it's the same number of fish that would have been on the gear that was somewhere in the water column, but it's what happens to it as it gets up near the vessel. And some of that has been dealt with within other fisheries. This is also pilot work, so we can adjust it on the fly to determine what do we run one skate through it, half a skate, 2 skates, what do we do? That's all part of that sort of pilot nature of this project.
But you get them all at once.
Do you risk the unit if you park the gear, or is it also attached to the vessel with another line?
So that's a great question. And there is, we have what we call the insurance stopper. So there's these smaller devices that should the gear part, they have a chance of engaging with the keyhole shape that you saw in the picture. And it engages in that and stops it. So there is some, what we call insurance on it, that you're not going to lose it if the gear part's on this end, you can go to the other end and haul it, but it's not a guarantee.
We didn't have any snarls when we set, so I don't know what would happen if you had a substantial snarl wanting to come through.
Yeah, so snarls happen regularly with them in the Antarctic, and they haven't been having a big issue with that.
We also have 2 units for exactly that eventuality.
I just think I'm pretty sure my 5/16 deer corn wouldn't be strong enough. It's not a very strong line. It just coils nicely. Deer corn? No one uses it anymore, really. Yeah.
Mine was 5/16 pro lines.
Yeah. So for this project, as we bid it out this past year, we did ask for heavier line. And I forget the specs on that right now. I can find that out during break. Yeah, no, it was not less than 3/8.
You mentioned that the shuttle was really close by. If we wanted to take a look at it, is that something we could do during the break or too far for that time?
That depends how long our break is. But after the meeting, we can certainly, if you're still in town, we can do a quick jog out there. It's like a half a block away. So we'd love to show them to you.
Yeah, Sean.
Just comment, I mean, certainly, I mean, there's going to be the, the bycatch issue and then the horning of the fish and that, but the alternative is to keep doing what we're doing. And those fish are 100% mortality if the whales are around. So I encourage your research here. And I mean, I hate to think of the millions of pounds of sablefish we fed to whales before the pots were finally adopted, but this is along the same vein.
Any other questions or comments?
One final correction, because I do like being accurate. I've so thought that it was just a cooperative fine that they would impose, but the fine actually does go through OLE, so Office of Law Enforcement. If there is any, if a vessel exceeds its basically, it's like its bycatch quota in ABM, so OLE does impose those fines. So we would have to pursue that, getting those funds through OLE, which might be that would be a bigger challenge.
Okay, if not, maybe it's time to take a break. So now it's 10:35. Let's reconvene at 11:50. 10. We're gonna go and get started. We're a little behind schedule, but we're gonna start with Basha doing a little presentation. So if everybody can get back on their seats.
Yes, thank you. I would like to take the opportunity to just present the new IPHC tool for reporting tags, and just want to make sure that everybody is aware of this new tool, and you're welcome to use it. And it's pretty nice that if you find a tag, you can actually look up the details about this tag. So if you access the IPHC main website, so you can see here we have that on the screen. If you go to quick links, you have a link here, tag reporting. If you click here, you can report IPHC tag using the IPHC tag recovery tool. So you just click here. And it might take a moment to load that page. So just a second. So this is the new IPHC tag recovery tool. And when you find a tag, what you can do, you just look at the tag number, and you can get automatic feedback on that tag using this tool. So let's say if you find the tag number 87, this is just an example that I know exists in our database. And you can then select tag type. And it's going to show you the example how this tag type would look like. So if you find this tag, you can later also upload a picture of this tag using this tool here. And it's much easier if you use your phone, because you can upload directly picture from your phone. So with selecting the right tag number, you can read all the information about this tag. So you will have here the tag number of type, IPHJ. This is the example, and you'll have all the information that has been recorded in our database. So again, you have automatic feedback about where that tag was released, what type of experiment this tag is associated with, and so on. And then there below here, there's also a map where you can look up where that specific tag was released. So with this tool, you would not have to wait for the tag recovery letter after you submit the tag to get that feedback about specific experiment. So if you find this tag, you just click then, did you find this tag, report it to the IPHC. You would have an option to add additional details, the recovery date, fish length. You can report it in either centimeters or inches, fish sex if known, gear used. If it's a part of the the tail recognition pattern study, you would be also able to upload the picture of the tail of that specific halibut directly here through this tool. And you can also fill the coordinates for where that tag was recovered. And if you fill the coordinates, let's say, you can put any, it's also going to show you where that tag was recovered in reference to when it was released. You can also provide additional information in this box here. Different button on my computer. So you'd continue your submission using this button here. You'd then enter your first and last name, your email, your address, city and state, zip code, port when this tag was delivered, your vessel name if it was commercially caught, as well as you can select the reward for that tag directly through this tool. Any additional comments here, and you just click submit and download tag recovery letter. So simple and easy. After clicking submit and download tag letter, you would get all that information in the form of a PDF letter that you can just download directly on your phone and use that for your reference. I will just note that, please, we still do want to receive, if possible, the otoliths and fin clips from those fish that have been recovered with a tag. So you can provide that as usual to IPHC field staff when you see them. But this is intended to, if it's out of season, you don't have an option to access IPHC field staff, or just get the direct feedback on that tag that you have recovered if you're interested, where it was released and so on. So I do encourage you to, you can explore the tool and use it.
Is there any particular way we should store an otolith or a fin tag if we take it?
There's no specific directions for otolith, just keep it dry for sending. The fin clips should be dry. If you are able to send the fin clip or deliver it later to the field staff, that fin clip should be stored dry. You don't want this to be going bad. But that's the only instructions.
Is there like a YouTube video or something where you could instruct people on how to do that properly? Like, oh, it is, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's instruction how to remove the otolith and so. But there's also on the IPHC website, there is a video how to remove otolith. There's no specific instruction about how to cut the fin clip, but you just make a quick snip and dry that fin.
So you're tagging a lot of sublegal fish too, right? And
That
what
is
about-
correct. Currently, we tag mostly the sublegal
Yeah,
fish.
so if it comes up and it's still illegal, what do you want us to do?
If you recover fish that has been tagged by the IPHC, it doesn't matter whether it's sublegal or not, you are still allowed to retain it.
Well, can we give you all the tag information and throw it back over or what?
We prefer to get the information on that fish about its age, so we prefer that fish is actually
Killed.
and
Sacrificed.
you sacrifice for science and that you recover the otoliths. And again, if it was commercially caught on the commercial trip, it can be sold. If it wasn't like, for example, the troll vessel, if it was recovered, it can be retained, but it can't be sold. It can be retained for personal use. As long as it's IPHC tag. This does not apply to any other organization that might have been permitted to tag Pacific halibut but it's not direct IPHC tag.
And on a charter boat, we could keep that in addition to the daily bag limit for,
Correct, yes.
okay.
So that was a quick introduction to that new tool. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Basha. Now the only item that is left really is to review the report. So what I'll be doing is I'll be sharing the report on the screen. I'd like to go over the different items that were added to the report and see if there's any comments or edits that need to be made. So I'm going to be sharing my screen now. Okay. Hold on a sec. So yeah, you go on my screen, but
Yeah, and you go applications.
oh yeah,
And then
yeah,
you get
perfect. Great, thanks.
and yeah, just click
Share.
It takes a minute.
Okay, so that should appear on the screen. Okay. Is there a way to?
And you can increase it on your end and you can.
Oh yeah.
increase it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you can do full screen. Yeah. Perfect. Great. Thanks.
But you can increase
Yeah.
it a little bit here.
Okay. All right, so this is the draft report. I'll be just moving to the sections that really pertain to the discussion. That's section 4, I believe. So yeah, that's the season overview. I think everybody can see this. I'm gonna increase the font a little more. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I think all the text is there. Okay, so these are the highlights of yesterday's session of your review. So I'll be reading every single one of them, and please let us know if there's any edits or modifications that need to be made, or something added or removed. So the RAB noted the following key 2024 fishery updates provided by the RAB members. First one, A general difficulty in finding fish in locations previously known to represent good fishing grounds was noted, possibly reflecting changes in Pacific halibut movement and population composition. Second, whale depredation remains an issue in some areas. Should be an S there. With IPHC regulatory area 4A, 4C, D, and E edge, and 3A again being highlighted by some RAB members. C, duckfish were a substantially increased problem in 2024 with high catches reported in IPHC regulatory areas 2B and 3A. Yes.
Can you add 2C to that?
So 2B, 2C, and 3A. Yep. Okay, fourth, sand fleas were reported a substantial problem in 2024 in most northern areas. Some RAB members reported attempting to reduce the problem by floating their gear off the bottom with limited success.
You know, I don't know that we can do anything about sand fleas, but we can certainly monitor them. And I wonder if maybe if there hasn't been a baseline or something from previous data, at least in recent years, that we get one and see if it's a continuing or increasing problem. So
yeah, I think there's going to be an opportunity after the in the guidance of the RAB members to direct future research to add a statement. In fact, there's already a statement in that effect that we could revise. E, there was a suggestion from the Secretariat to consider polling or surveying the fleet at several points during the years in an attempt to identify challenges as they arise for potential investigation. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on. F, the lack of information on whether environmental changes or differences from previous years resulted in the increased sand fleas was discussed. And again, there's going to be a comment later on regarding sand fleas. G, habitat impacts due to non-halibut fisheries on Pacific halibut catch rates and recruitment represent a source of continued concern. H, fish prices are low and there were difficulties in finding buyers at times in 2024. I, several reports on spotty fishing during 2024 and continued concerns regarding localized depletion in IPHC regulatory area 4D. Just
Could you specify on I, in area 4D, that St. Matthew?
yeah, actually, you'll see that there's a comment
Okay.
at the very end, specifically stating that. J, there were supportive comments on the continued collection of water profiler data and encouragement that this information continue to be disseminated via the IPHC website in 2025, noting the gap in data collection for 2024. K, commercial catch rates were much lower than expected in all IPHC regulatory areas in 2024. L, catches in the charter sector remain high in IPHC regulatory area 2C and decreased in 3A, but required substantial searching to obtain those rates. M, small fish, 24 to 32 inches, were being seen in numbers in IPHC regulatory areas 2A, 2B, 2C, and 3A.
I think you could probably add 3B to that too.
Okay. Yes.
I feel a little uncomfortable when that one sentence, L, is based on the testimony of one RAB member, me, fishing cross sound. So, I mean, yeah, that was our experience for sure for the last couple of years, but 3A and 2C are gigantic and I'm just at the edge of it. So I don't know, does everybody here feel like that's valid or worth noting?
I definitely heard about, searching for larger fish in Cook Inlet and the Northern Gulf, but I know, speaking for myself, finding small fish has never been a problem. So I wouldn't say that there was, I don't know, you could say in 3A from anecdotally, there's searching for good fishing, but there was plenty of numbers of fish.
So maybe the issue is that what requires substantial searching was for larger fish, perhaps? But that was not your experience, Steve, then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying we had 9 boats fishing, most of 100 days. We only fished in 3A 1/10 of that time at the most, probably more like 1/20 because it was not very productive and it's definitely been a trend. But I'm just questioning whether, I mean, you guys are scientists and it's anecdotal for sure. And I just feel a little insecure about whether it's a valid observation, but I was going to leave it up to everyone else to say yes or no.
It might be valid. I mean, the reports I was hearing from Seward too were similar, that they were having a hard time catching fish out by Montague in areas that they'd been catching them usually, and that there'd been more gear conflict with commercial groups, which usually, speaks to some scarcity of fish for both groups. So yeah, I think you could probably leave it and that would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, if that's okay with you, this really reflects observations from RAB members, so I think it's appropriate. The next one was N. There was interest in understanding the effects of habitat disturbance due to fishing effects, including bottom contact from midwater trawl and bottom trawl gear in all areas. And then the last one is the one that Sean was alluding to. Concerns were expressed regarding localized depletion of Pacific halibut around St. Matthews Island from extensive fishing. And I think yesterday Lando also commented on it. So these are the summary of the observations that we recorded yesterday. If there's anything else that we missed, please let us know.
It's just Matthew. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is it two? I'm sorry, two T's or is it one T or two T's? One T?
Two T's.
Two T's. So is that correct? Okay. Okay, so is everybody agreeing with the summary of the observations from yesterday? Okay. So let's move on to item 5, and the point 8 would be that the RAB noted paper 05 that provided the RAB with the IPHC 5-year program of integrated research and monitoring. 9, that the RAB noted the latest update provided on the investigation of the use of artificial intelligence, AI, for determining the age of Pacific halibut from images of collected otoliths. The IPHC Secretariat is in the process of creating a database comprising images with the expert-provided labels for aging use. This database will be utilized to train and test a convolutional neural network, CNN, a type of AI model renowned for its efficacy in image classification tasks. 10, the substantial potential of noting the substantial potential of incorporating AI techniques to supplement the IPHC Secretariat's current aging protocol, informing on the population age structure and serving as input to the Pacific halibut stock assessment. The RAB requested ongoing updates on the project as part of the IPHC 5-year program of integrated research and monitoring. Yep. Okay, going on to 5.1, the research. I'm going to scroll down. The first one, 11, is that the RAB noted paper 06 that provided a description of the biological and system science research projects. 12, the RAB noted that the main objectives of the biological and system science research at the IPHC are to identify, understand, and apply. These are the same as last year. This is now going into the specific research area. So 13 is regarding the work presented on refining the genetic population structure. So the RAB noted paper 06 that provided a description of the studies conducted by the IPHC Secretariat on population genomics. Initial conclusions were presented indicating a lack of genetic structure among the spawning groups examined, and in particular, the lack of genetic differentiation between spawning groups sampled to the east and to the west of Amchichka Pass in the Western Ocean Islands. The RAB noted that the existence of a single genetic stock within IPHC conventional waters is consistent with a high degree of gene flow due to the highly migratory nature of Pacific halibut, as highlighted by the observed changes in distribution of Pacific halibut in fishing grounds during the 2024 season. Yeah, Brian.
I just might, the most interesting part I got from that entire discussion was the distinction that halibut maybe don't care where they breed, but they do care where they feed. And I thought that was interesting because I didn't understand that characteristic about halibut before it got brought up.
Yeah, that was a conclusion that was derived from studies other than the one presented here. So I would argue that I think it would be most appropriate to just focus on the work presented, but we note those conclusions that were derived from past tagging studies. So I would advocate to omit the comment in this particular item. Any other comments? Next one is 14. Let me scroll down a little bit. That's regarding the reproductive assessment. And that is the RAB noted paper 06 that provided a description of the studies designed to update maturity schedules and estimate fecundity in female Pacific halibut. The RAB noted the update in maturity schedules that resulted from the histological assessment of maturity. Sorry, this is redundant. From samples collected in 2022 and 2023. The RAB recommended adding maturity data from maturity samples collected in 2024 to establish a revised maturity schedule covering 3 consecutive years of data and determine its effects in stock assessment. The RAB also noted the collection of ovarian samples for fecundity in 2023 and 2024 during the FIS, as well as in a pilot study conducted in the fall of 2024 to collect samples, particularly from large females, to conduct fecundity estimations during 2025 over a broad range of female sizes. No comments, I'll scroll down. The next is regarding discard mortality rates. So the RAB noted paper 06 that provided a description of an ongoing study designed to improve our knowledge on discard mortality rates in the Pacific halibut charter recreational fishery. The RAB noted the results on the reduced mortality rate of Pacific halibut released in excellent viability. Next would be 16, regarding whale depredation mitigation strategies. The RAB noted paper 06 that provided a description of an ongoing study designed to identify and test new tools to minimize marine mammal depredation of hook capture Pacific halibut, and recommended that the IPHC continue efforts towards this goal. You'll see that later on there's a specific request regarding the continuation of this study. So moving into monitoring, unless there's any comments or edits to be made. If not, so fishery dependent data, 17, the RAB noted the update on the implementation of electronic logbooks in Alaska. The IPHC Secretariat intends on keeping the fleet informed of ways to improve data collection efficiency while ensuring data confidentiality. Moving into the fishery independent data, the first item is regarding the FIS season, design and implementation. The RAB noted paper 07 that provided an overview of the IPHC FIS design and implementation in 2020. Sorry, this should be 2025. The RAB. Oh, yeah, you're correct. I'm sorry. Yep. So I apologize. The RAB recalled that the FIS standard specifications allow for both fixed and snap gear vessels to participate coastwide, noting that data from snap gear vessels continue to be adjusted in order to compare to fixed gear data. Moving to FIS design evaluation, it's line 20. The RAB noted paper 08 that provided proposed designs for the IPHC FIS for the 2025-2027 period and evaluation of those designs. The RAB noted the experimental trial using pink salmon as bait on 50% of 2024 FIS stations and chunt salmon on the other 50%, provided mixed results in the areas it was undertaken, both in terms of, let me scroll down, catch rates and budget savings. As a result, the IPHC Secretariat would not be moving forward with using pink salmon as an alternative to chum salmon. 22. The RAB supported an annual FIS design with sufficient coverage across all biological regions and requested that the IPHC Secretariat continue its efforts to obtain supplementary funding for FIS activities that would support this goal, including through direct increases in contracting party contribution. 23, the RAB noted that the oceanographic sampling program using water profilers was going to be continued in 2025 with the goal of providing a source of data on environmental conditions experienced by Pacific halibut. The RAB requested that the IPH Secretariat produce maps showing how long it has been since each fish station was last sampled, and for these to be made available at RAB026 or earlier. Okay. 25, the RAB requested that the IPHC Secretariat work with relevant contracting party agencies to determine the feasibility of combining fish charters alongside a vessel's commercial quota. Let me scroll down just a little bit. The RAB discussed the following concerns raised throughout the meeting. Recent sparse designs and the lack of comprehensive information as of 2024. Second, what the impact of reduced footprint designs means for the stock assessment the longer the reduced designs persist. C, the need to move back to a broad coastwide design involving a randomized station count, either as a rotational block or fully randomized design. And D, the possible application of funds resulting from internal fines due to exceeded bycatch caps in abundance-based management for scientific research purposes.
Those fines wouldn't be, and well, I don't know, I guess, I don't know if OLE would be internal or not.
Oh,
I think maybe just OLE instead of internal.
OLE imposed.
What about fines paid to OLE?
Yeah, that would be accurate too.
Are there any edits for any of these 4 points under 26? No? If not, the next item is the 3 points on regarding the guidance and discussion. So items that were discussed this morning. So 27 is the RAB requested that the IPHC Secretariat collect information on possible conditions that could lead to the observed increased prevalence of sand fleas affecting longline catches. 28, the RAB requested that the IPHC Secretariat continue investigations on Pacific halibut juvenile stages, including the mapping of juvenile habitat throughout IPHC convention waters. And then finally, 29, the RAB requested that the IPHC Secretariat set up efforts to secure vessels to conduct field studies in 2025 to test catch protection devices in areas with known whale depredation. Are there any edits required? Okay, now it's finally under other business, line 30, the RAB agreed that the placement of the RAB meeting in November before the Pacific Marine Expo and prior to the interim meeting over 1.5 days is optimal and recommends to continue this meeting format moving forward. And that basically completes the review of the report, and the next step would be its adoption. Came in at the right time.
So just on that last paragraph, because I did miss the discussion, I'm assuming you're all in agreement that the sort of scheduling for this meeting works well still before the Fish Expo, and that the extra half day has really helped you not only have a think about some of the topics that were presented, but then be able to have a general discussion today. Is that something you'd still be willing to support, the extra half day? Yeah?
Yes.
That's good, yeah. Yeah, I think the Secretariat team as well felt quite rushed in previous meetings, and we're just trying to push things out, present, and then the discussions aren't very robust, and we're missing some of the insight that you provide, so I think we'd agree. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks, Giuseppe. That does look like it's adopted.
I would move that we accept the RAB report as written.
Agreed? Agreed. Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Cheers. We'll give it a hand. And thank you to the support team behind the scenes, making it all function. There's quite a few people in back offices as well. Claude?
Yeah, if there's a desire to keep doing this. Sorry. If there's a desire to see the catch protection devices, we can meet in the front foyer here in the next 5 minutes, and I can walk down there with you and show them to you for those who are available.
Also, for those staying, there's lunch provided at noon. So please stick around and we'll have another opportunity for chatting among us. So thank you very much for everybody for your attendance and your time. We really appreciate it.
Well, safe travels, everybody.